Welcome back to Healing is My Hobby, and welcome to our This Might Be a Trauma Response segment, where we talk about those why am I like this moments. We name common patterns, we normalize emotional responses, and we create space for compassion instead of shame. Today, we are talking about something that I think is going to stop a lot of you mid-listen. High functioning trauma responses. Because here's what most people don't realize. Trauma doesn't always look like falling apart. Sometimes it looks like having it all together. Sometimes it looks like being the most productive person in the room, the one everyone relies on, the one who never asks for help, the one who is fine, always fine. If that landed somewhere on your chest just now, stay with me because this episode is for you. First, let's define what we mean by high-functioning trauma. It is not a clinical diagnosis, it is a pattern. It describes someone who experienced overwhelming stress or trauma, big T or little t, and whose nervous system adapted by doubling down. Instead of shutting down, they sped up. Instead of withdrawing, they performed. Instead of asking for help, they became the help. And from the outside, they look incredible. Capable, driven, reliable, strong. But on the inside, there's often a very different story. Exhaustion they can't explain. A quiet sense that something is wrong, even when everything looks right. A deep difficulty slowing down, because slowing down means feeling, and feeling has never felt safe. That is high-functioning trauma. And today, I want to name 4 of the most common ways it shows up. Number 1, hyperproductivity and overworking. This might be a trauma response if you feel uncomfortable doing nothing, if rest makes you anxious, if you measure your worth by how much you get done, if being busy feels safer than being still. Here's what's happening underneath. For many people who grew up in unpredictable or emotionally unsafe environments, productivity became a way to feel in control. If I work hard enough, nothing bad can happen. If I stay busy, I don't have to feel what I'm carrying. Busyness became armor. And it worked for a while. But armor is heavy, and when your worth becomes tied to your output, rest doesn't feel like recovery. It feels like failure. The nervous system never learned how to downshift, so it just keeps going until the body makes it stop. Burnout, illness, collapse. And even then, the first thought is often, how do I get back to being productive as fast as possible? If that's you, this might be a trauma response, not a character flaw, not laziness in disguise. Your nervous system learned that doing was safe, being was not. This is something I've been working on for years now, and for me, resting was so uncomfortable for such a long time. It wasn't until I was in my 40s when I realized that I was over-functioning in a lot of areas of my life. So that is a big one to unpack. Let's move on to the second response we want to address today. Perfectionism. This might be a trauma response if good enough has never actually felt good enough. If you replay conversations looking for what you did wrong, if a single mistake can unravel an entire day, if you hold yourself to a standard that would never apply to anyone you love. Perfectionism gets labeled as a personality trait, a quirk, a strength even. But clinically, what I see again and again is this. Perfectionism is frequently a response to an environment where mistakes were not safe. Maybe mistakes were met with criticism, disappointment, withdrawal of love, anger. And so this child, brilliant, adaptive, doing whatever it took to stay safe, learned that being perfect was protection. If I don't make mistakes, I won't be rejected. If I do everything right, I will be loved. That belief got wired in deep. And as an adult, the standard just followed them into their work, their relationships, their parenting, their internal monologue, the inner critic who sounds like your harshest judge. It started as a survival strategy. It was trying to protect you. But you don't have to earn your worth anymore. You never actually did. Let's look at response number 3, hyperindependence. This might be a trauma response if asking for help feels almost physically uncomfortable. If you would rather struggle alone than let someone see you struggle. If I'll figure it out is your default setting. If depending on someone feels like a risk you're not willing to take. We celebrate independence in our culture. Self-sufficiency is a virtue. Needing people is weakness. But here's the clinical reality. Humans are wired for connection. Needing others is not a flaw. It's biology. Hyperindependence develops when depending on people wasn't safe. When you reached out and no one came. When you asked for help and were let down. When the people who were supposed to be there weren't. You stopped reaching. You built walls that looked like strength. And in many ways they were. They kept you safe when safety wasn't guaranteed. But walls don't know when danger is over. They just keep everything out, including the people who actually want to show up for you. Hyperindependence isn't strength. It's a wound wearing the mask of strength. And healing it means learning slowly, carefully, at your own pace, that it is safe to let people in. Response number 4, people-pleasing and fawning. This might be a trauma response if you automatically prioritize everyone else's comfort over your own. If you say yes when you mean no, if conflict feels like a threat to your safety, if your mood is directly tied to whether the people around you are okay. You've probably heard of fight, flight, and freeze. But there is a 4th trauma response that doesn't get talked about nearly enough, and it's called fawning. Fawning is people-pleasing as a survival strategy. That's why you might have heard me in early episodes. I like to say fight, flight, freeze, or please. Like I said, fawning is people-pleasing as a survival strategy. It develops when the environment taught you, often very early, that keeping other people happy was the key to staying safe. Maybe there was someone unpredictable in your home, and you learned to read the room before you even walked into it. Maybe expressing your own needs made things worse, so you stopped having needs, or at least you stopped showing them. Fawning looks like apologizing when you've done nothing wrong, shrinking yourself so others feel bigger, feeling responsible for other people's emotions, saying what someone wants to hear instead of what is true. And it is exhausting because when you spend your life managing everyone else's experience, there is very little space left for your own. Fawning is not kindness. Real kindness comes from choice. Fawning comes from fear. And you deserve to know the difference. Before we close today, I want to add something to your healing toolbox because all 4 of these responses have something in common. They pull you away from yourself. Overworking disconnects you from your body. Perfectionism disconnects you from your worth. Hyperindependence disconnects you from your need for others. And people-pleasing disconnects you from your own voice. So the skill I want to leave you with today is one that brings you back. It's called values grounding. And it's simple, powerful, and you can do it anywhere. Here's how it works. Find a quiet moment, even 5 minutes is enough, and ask yourself 3 questions. Question number 1, who am I when I'm not performing? Not the version of yourself that's productive, not the version that's keeping everyone happy, not the version that's holding it together. Who are you when none of that is required? Question 2, what do I actually value? Not what you think you should value, not what would make other people proud. What matters to you? Deeply, quietly, in the part of you that existed before the world told you who to be. Connection, creativity, peace, honesty, growth, joy. Write down 3 to 5 words. Don't overthink it. Trust what comes first. Question 3, is what I'm doing right now aligned with those values? Or am I running a pattern that belongs to the past? This isn't about judgment. It's about awareness. Because when we can see the gap between our values and our patterns, we create the possibility of choosing differently. Not perfectly, not all at once, but one moment at a time. That is healing. The other thing I want to talk about before we close is on my other podcast, Chasing Brighter, that I co-host with my sister. The entire month of May will be about identity, and so you might really enjoy those episodes. If you have been listening to this podcast and you're starting to unpack who you really are beneath the trauma, beneath the anxiety, beneath all of these things that we've been talking about. So I encourage you to check that out at chasingbrighter.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. Today, I want to leave you with something important. If you've heard yourself in any of these 4 responses today, honestly, I hear myself in all 4. That is nothing to be ashamed of. It means your nervous system was paying attention. It means you adapted. It means you survived something. High-functioning trauma doesn't mean you're broken. It means you found a way to keep going, even when keeping going was hard. But you don't have to keep going the same way forever. Awareness is the first door, and compassion is how you walk through it. So this week, try the values grounding practice. Sit with those 3 questions and just be curious to see what comes up for you. And if something does come up, that's not a problem. That's information. And information is always the beginning of change. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this work. I'll see you next week. If you want to know more about my practice, you can go to jessicacolarcolcsw.com or follow my practice on Instagram at jessicacolarcolcsw. If you want to sign up for the newsletter, stay in the know, read my blog, you can go to healingismyhobby.com. You can follow me on YouTube and Instagram at healingismyhobby. Have a great day.